Good morning. Thank you for joining us, John.
Good morning to you too.
Good morning.
Do you know today, let's see, Emilio Avalos is sentenced to death, but it's still up to a judge?
Right. The jury returns a verdict that recommends a death sentence, and that happened last week. Okay. January 25th of this next year is the date set for sentencing. So Judge Hawkins, who presided over the case, has the choice of either imposing the death sentence that was recommended by the jury, or he can reduce it to life without the possibility of parole. Parenthetically, he can't go the other way. If a jury had recommended life without possibility, they can't raise it to a death penalty, but a judge can always ameliorate it to life without possibility of parole. Chances are that's not going to happen, and Judge Hawkins is going to impose the death sentence recommended by the jury. And this is a good illustration of what we have to do with a death penalty that we didn't have to do, or we wouldn't have had to do had we passed the proposition that was on the recent ballot. What happens now is an appellate lawyer for a death case is appointed. That takes 5 or 6 years because there are just so few lawyers that are qualified to write death penalty appeals, and there's a direct appeal to the California Supreme Court. So that takes another several years. So it's 8 or 10 years just to get a California Supreme Court decision on a case like this. And then there's the federal habeas proposition, which takes probably another 5 to 10 years. So it's a long, involved, drawn-out process when you have a death penalty. But of course, it's the kind of process that we sort of are required to go through because you don't want to execute someone if you've made a mistake. And so that's pretty much what Mr. Avalos can expect. He will be sentenced January 25th, rather. He'll be sent to San Quentin while all this is pending.
Wow. Also, we're talking about Prop 8, the Supreme Court. Are we going to be hearing from them today?
Well, it's a good question. We were supposed to hear from them last week and then the week before last, and now it's this week. Here's the real problem. There's two sort of tracks that they're looking at as far as same-sex marriage. One is the Defense of Marriage Act, which is a federal act and, of course, has been found unconstitutional by many district courts and circuit courts of appeal. Then there's the California Proposition 8. Now, Proposition 8 is very interesting. It was a bench trial in front of a federal judge. The judge found the proposition to be unconstitutional, but he used not only federal but California state grounds to find it unconstitutional. So it doesn't necessarily fit cleverly into the Defense of Marriage Act. And so I think what's happening is the Supreme Court is trying to decide, do we want to take this up now? Do we want to start telling states how to operate? Or do we want to simply limit it to the federal Defense of Marriage Act? And I think that's why there's some controversy. As you know, if the federal government decides, or if the Supreme Court rather decides not to take this up, then same-sex marriage is legal in California because Prop 8 was found unconstitutional. If they take it up, chances are March or April before we get an opinion, maybe as late as June before we get an opinion on the case. So it's a dicey situation, and I think that's why the Supreme Court is being very careful about what they decide to do here, because there's a difference between the federal rules and the state conclusions. Remember, many states have already found same-sex marriage to be constitutional. Initiatives in several states have passed. There's 9 states now that recognize same-sex marriage. So the question is, do we want to take up this California case and open up the question of the federal Supreme Court telling states how they can organize themselves insofar as the institution of marriage state by state?
Wow, that makes sense. It's tricky. I hear a lot of talk radio and people are saying, no, the Fed should stay out and let the states operate on their own and do what they want.
And you can imagine there are opinions going in both directions on the Supreme Court at this point.
And we'll see how it all shapes up. Thank you so much, John, for joining us this morning. And of course, if you want to get a hold of John, you can just go to their website, dolanlawoffices.com. Again, that's dolanlawoffices.com, and they're happy to answer all of your legal questions. We'll see you back here next Monday.
Indeed.
And the time right now is 26 minutes.